Hello, are we up and running?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Hi, good to see you. All right. So welcome, everybody. And this is a very strange situation talking to a computer screen. But welcome all of you to our question and answer session for financial aid for 2019. In case you don't know me, my name is Curtis Hisayasu, and I'm the director of both the EAP and the Academy programs. And I want everybody to know right off the bat that this is a little bit of an experiment for us. Our first time making use of this Zoom feature to try to provide a kind of wider support for all of our families, both prospective and current families in our programs. And since financial aid is one of those things that is usually people have a lot of questions about, we thought this would be a great way to kind of allow all of those members of our community to kind of come together and get their questions answered and make sure that they're feeling as though they have support from the Robinson Center for this pretty important part of your students' educations. So welcome to everybody who's here. I do want to say again too that because this is new, we're going to be making our way through the technical aspects of this as we go. So we hope you'll bear with us if there are any kind of technical difficulties as we move forward. So, but before I say anything more, I want to go ahead and introduce my co-conspirator here, Lisa Whitehead. Lisa, maybe you can introduce yourself and say a little bit about what your role is at the Financial Aid Center.
Hi, as he said, I'm Lisa Whitehead, and I'm an assistant director in the Financial Aid Office. I've been with Financial Aid here at the UW for almost 13 years, so I know a little bit about financial aid. So feel free to ask any questions that you may have.
And Lisa's been working with us and has worked with us many years on specifically the questions that EAP students and Academy students have about financial aid. So we're very lucky to have her with us today. Somebody else that you're not seeing right off the bat here is our academic advisor, Catherine Grubbs, who is in a different part of the building. She can introduce herself. So.
Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine. I'm going to try to be providing tech support for today's session. Not an expert, so please forgive me, but a couple things I just want to make you aware of. If you're new to Zoom, if you kind of hover over the bottom of the screen that's popped up, you'll notice some different functions down there. One is a chat. If you click on that chat, you'll see the dialog box open over on the side. I'm going to type something in it right now so that you can see. What I'm going to ask is that you use that to correspond with us. So if you have questions that were not submitted through the RSVP or questions that come up as we're talking, please go ahead and use that chat box to fill those in, and I'll be monitoring that. Also, if you're having any technical issues, feel free to also list those there, and I'll do my best to try to help you offline. The other thing I want to mention is that we are recording this session, so if you're not getting great reception or if you have to jump on or off the call at some point, we are recording the full session, and we'll send that link out to everybody at the end. So let us know what we can do to help you, but I'm glad to have you all with us. I'm going to disappear now, but I'll be listening in.
All right, thanks, Catherine. So before we move forward, and I do have a couple of questions from folks that RSVP'd for this event that we can kind of get started with. But before we move forward, I just wanted to offer a couple of quick clarifications. One is that this event and this particular question and answer is designed specifically for all of the Robinson Center students, either prospective or current, that are applying to be fully matriculated freshmen next September 2019, in the fall of 2019. And that generally falls into two categories: students that are prospective UW Academy students, meaning that you are currently in the process of putting together an application to apply to the UW Academy to start next fall, and our current transition school students that are currently enrolled in our transition school and are making their way through the transition school curriculum, and who, if they make successfully through that year, will become fully matriculated freshmen again, fall 2019, September of next year. So these are the two groups that need to be concerned about the type of financial aid that we're talking about here today. Some of you may be online to ask questions about applying to the transition school, or maybe you're interested in financial aid broadly in some of our other programs like the Saturday program or the summer program. And let me assure you that while we do have financial aid options for all of those different programs, that's actually a separate conversation, because that's financial aid that is offered directly through the Robinson Center and Robinson Center specific programs. What we're talking about here today is the kind of federal financial aid, that big kind of amorphous system of federal loans and grants and that occur at the University of Washington level, right? So just to offer that piece of clarification, Lisa here works and is an expert in how that system kind of works. I am not an expert in that. Catherine is not an expert in the university's financial aid system, and this is our opportunity to kind of ask questions about that. So that brings me already to kind of one of the first questions that has been offered by folks who registered for this event and offered some of their questions up early. One of those questions was from a parent who says, we have our daughter applying for both the transition school and the UW Academy at the same time this year. How would this impact financial aid qualifications for both, if any? And my answer to that question is that they're very different, actually. For the UW Academy and prospective UW Academy students, you want to be applying to financial aid as though you were applying to college, right? For those of you that are applying wholly new to the transition school program this year, the only financial aid that will be officially offered to you is through the Robinson Center itself, and that's not something that we're going to kind of talk about here today. So those are two different programs, and only one of them really matters for the kind of discussion that we're having here right now. Another question is, and this might be a good one for me to start off with, and maybe I'll pass it on to you afterwards, is a kind of a broad question. Will application outcomes have any bearing on financial aid being available for the candidate or not? Some of you may have noticed that you are applying to financial aid months before, in many cases, the applications for these programs are actually due. And it's one of the reasons why financial aid tends to be somewhat complicated for the students and the parents and the families that are applying to our programs. Is you have to apply to financial aid in January, whereas the actual application for the UW Academy isn't due till March. The transition school applications are due much earlier than that. So it's a little bit of a mismatch, precisely because our application process is so late and so different from the regular UW's application process. Lisa, how would the timeline work for a student who is applying in a regular manner? They would apply by November. The application.
So when they're applying as a freshman to come in, say fall of 2019, you would apply starting October 1st of that same year that you do the application. So say last October 1st, the application became available for the 2019-2020 aid year. You can apply anytime throughout October 1st through of 2018 to June of 2020, but to be considered for financial aid, priority aid, and things like that, as you've been told, by the January 15th deadline, and that's why they talk about the January 15th deadline. But every year you have to do this every year. So there's a long period of time, and it seems to be, it gets confusing for people, yes. But it's so that we can be ready, so that we can package people and they can know what their aid is by that fall. So that's why it opens in October 1st of last 2018, and it'll be open for almost a year and a half.
Okay. So we've encouraged all of our students to get their applications in by the January 15th deadline. And what that will allow the financial aid office to do is to kind of process the application itself. And then when the Robinson Center makes its admissions decision, so when we admit our academy at class in April, we'll pass on that information to the financial aid office, who will then independently contact those students and let them know about what their aid package looks like, what their options are that are being offered to them. So this is something, this is just something for all of you to know, that you will be applying later on this year, finishing up your applications later on this year. And many of you will not hear about the actual outcomes of these applications until after you've been fully accepted. So both transition school students that are being accepted into EAP and UW Academy students who are just applying and trying to get in, you won't actually hear about what your application, what your financial aid offer is until you are formally accepted. But we also work very hard to make sure that those offers go out in the gap period between when you learn that you're accepted in the program and when you actually have to accept. So you also get the opportunity to review your financial situation as a factor in whether or not you'll be accepting or declining our offer of admission to the University of Washington. So hopefully that helps. And to go back to the question that was asked, will the application outcome have any bearing on financial aid being available for the candidate or not? Certainly, the financial aid office is going to wait to extend those offers until you've actually been accepted. And for any students that apply to our programs but are not accepted, or maybe independently make their own choice to not go on to become formal freshmen at the university, what happens to their applications?
They just kind of sit there.
Yeah.
So unless, and this happens with just the regular students applying as freshmen to the university, we don't make offers unless you're admitted. So we actually just recently uploaded 51,000 financial aid applications. Well, 51,000 students are not coming to the UW, to the UW. But so, yeah, it's you do it ahead of time. You don't hear from us unless you've been admitted. So any of you that have even students or children that are going to universities outside the Robinson School, that it works the same way.
So hopefully that clarifies a little bit of the process for people. So with that kind of larger setup and making sure that everybody knows exactly what kind of questions we're here to offer and what the forms of financial aid that we're talking about here today are, I want to get into some of the specific questions that people have. But I really want to encourage everybody that's on here to continue to write their questions in the chat on the side, and as we get through these questions, Catherine will make sure that we're dealing with everybody's questions as they kind of come up. I would say that, this is intended as a larger question and answer session. So if we don't get questions, we don't have answers to offer, and we'll maybe end a little bit early. But certainly, if anything comes up during this time, or if you already know you have questions as you've started the process, we hope that you'll bring those forward and that we can help you with them this time. So the first question that has been asked already is, has to do with how income is assessed in the qualification process. And this person asks, if I have two students who are applying for financial aid in the same year, in this particular case, and I'm assuming that that's college financial aid, how would our total income be assessed in the qualification process? How does having more than one student affect the way that we qualify for aid?
Okay, so when you do a FAFSA application, a magic number pops out called an EFC, which is your expected family contribution. And that number is comes to be by putting the household income, the number of people in the household, how many are in college, your assets, both for the student and the parent, and so forth. And so the more people that are in college, the lower the EFC goes. And so that's why when you're filling it out, you're saying, okay, we have 5 in our family and 2 will be in college. That is taken into the calculation of, okay, well, this family now has more than 1 student going to college. And so it adjusts for that, and the EFC then would be lower because of that.
Okay.
I think that's where they were going.
Yeah, absolutely. So it does take it into account, right? And one of the advantages of filling out this application at the federal level is even if you have students going to different schools.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
They will be, so that your other student could be going to school across the country. It's still going to get factored into the kind of aid that's available to you here and ostensibly at that other school as well.
Correct. And that EFC follows you from whatever schools that you're going to. So if you apply to more than 1 school, it's going to be the same EFC at all those schools because it's a federal methodology.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Another question, again, kind of specifically about the logistics of the application. If the parents of the student are divorced or separated, or if there's a kind of more complicated family situation, do both parents need to submit a FAFSA? And if so, are they submitted together or somehow separately?
So no. So the person that should be on the FAFSA is the parent that the student lives with or is supported by more for the 12 months prior to filling out the FAFSA. So it's just the parent the student, basically, it's usually the parent the student lives with. If for some reason parents become separated or divorced after you fill out the FAFSA, you can then contact our office and then we can consider revising the financial aid calculation based on the original information and then removing whatever parent is no longer in that household.
Thank you, Lisa. I noticed that one of our commenters is having a little bit of trouble hearing. Is anybody else having that problem? Are we coming through with enough volume for people? I'm not sure what we can do about that actually at this point.
I'm able to hear you all okay, but yeah, definitely. I just noticed that comment and curious if anybody else is having that problem. Feel free to type it into the side. Somebody's saying sounds good from here. Mel, the person that's having the difficulty, one thing you might want to check is both the volume on your computer overall, but to see if there's also a volume just with the Zoom, that there might be also another way to increase that there. I'm just checking to see. One thing, if you click on the little speaker, you'll notice that there are some different microphone options. So you might want to check in there to see. But like I mentioned, we'll also record this and are happy to send it out as well if you have trouble hearing just based on your computer.
Okay. Thanks, Catherine. We will also do our best to kind of speak up here and maybe shout a little bit since we're a little further away from the microphone. So another question that we had, again, relatively, I think, specific situation, but again, these complications come up around the FAFSA. This family has asked, what is the impact of financial aid outcomes if we have many active accounts, but the balances are very small? This person has actually suggested they have like hundreds of different accounts. And I don't know what the situation is.
Bank accounts?
I'm
Do you
assuming.
think any? So when you're filling out the FAFSA, they ask for you to put all your savings and checking accounts. You're not separately listing them. You're giving them the overall balance of those. If it's investments other than retirement, say stocks or mutual funds, you're going to put those under investments. And so you're going to put the overall number in as an investment. Or if there's a rental property, you're going to put the equity of that rental property or say vacation property, because that's considered an asset. So you're not going to list each one separately. You're going to look at the total of each one, add those up, and then put that in your asset area of the FAFSA.
Okay, so at this point, those are all actually the questions that were offered for us ahead of time. At this point, I can see questions pouring in on the sidebar.
Yes, we've got some good ones. So the first one is actually a two-parter. First question is there anything a student should do to apply for financial aid besides file the FAFSA?
At the University of Washington, no. We base all of our awarding off of the FAFSA only. Some schools use something called a CS profile, but here at the University of Washington, we do not.
And the second part was, is merit-based aid available as well as need-based aid?
We do have some merit-based aid. It is based off of your application to the university. So this would be more pertaining to the students that are applying as freshmen, because we look at what and those are based off of merit and need. So through our office, we do not have pure merit-based only. There has to be need to that.
Actually, because our students are coming in through the Robinson Center through a very different application process, and basically the way to understand that is to see that the Robinson Center itself is the admissions arm for both the Academy and the E programs here at the UW. We actually have our own set of merit-based scholarships that we offer to both of those programs. And it's worth noting that because our students come in through a different path, some of the other scholarship programs, specifically the one that I know of that we've had to deal with in the past, which is the yellow and gold scholarship.
Purple and gold?
The purple and gold scholarship.
Those for non-residents.
Yes, the purple and gold scholarship. And there's a couple of other scholarships that students are kind of considered at the regular freshman admission. Those actually are not available to our students because they come in again through a very different admissions process. But both the UW Academy and the E program do have a very small selection of kind of merit and need-based scholarships that we will offer our students. You don't apply for them separately. In both of those programs, you're considered for them as a part of the application process. So what will happen there is if you qualify for any of those merit scholarships, you will be alerted to the fact that you've received them when you're admitted to the program. So it's not something that you need to apply for separately. Do you have any suggestions for folks about where to seek out merit-based scholarships on their own?
You can go to our website, the finaid.uw.edu, and look under scholarships, and we have many outside organizations that you can look at. One good one to do, and you can, as your student goes through their college experience and everything, is the washboard.org. This is for Washington State students only. It's a good one because you set up an application and then they look at you, all different types of organizations that have scholarships pull that information. So you're only filling out one application for many different scholarships. And over your time in college, you can keep that updated. They want to know your background, your interests, you know, obviously your school stuff. But it could, when you sit down to do it, it could take you a good hour or more to fill it out, but you can update it at all times. That's a really good one. For students that are going into the sciences and that, there's the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship, and there's a link on our, and many students, I'm going to say about 1,500 at the UW get that every year. So I would check out our website and look under scholarships, and that would probably be the best place to go. There are other big, you know, search engines out there like FastWeb and stuff like that, but you're competing with the nation instead of just Washington.
One other note I want to make about applying to outside scholarships that are not directly related to the University of Washington is to just simply note that most of these scholarships understand themselves as advertising to a very specific group of people, which is to say seniors in high school who are going to college in the very near future. And I just want to assure folks that even when you look at a scholarship for an application to, and see that like the requirements require you to be a junior in high school or above, or maybe even at a certain age, or just as long as they are kind of scholarships that are meant for freshman college students or for students that are entering into college, it's often worth pursuing those. I would, in other words, because your student is coming in at a different age and through this kind of unusual path to the university, don't assume that they're suddenly disqualified for these applications and these scholarships. This is where the Robinson Center can often help. Oftentimes our experience is that these scholarships are very excited actually to include our students, who are often very high performing students, in their application pools, despite the fact that they are coming in at a different age or at a different time than the scholarship might expect. Sometimes the scholarship organizations need clarification about how the Robinson Center programs work, what it actually means for these students that they're being admitted at the age that they're at. And we here at the Robinson Center have all of that material. We have letters we can send out. We're happy to talk with administrators of scholarship programs on the phone. It's part of the role that we play to support students through that process. So don't be immediately discouraged if you look at all of these applications and all of them say, for seniors in high school going to college, because a lot of the time what they really want is college students, and they just assume that all students are going to be 17 to 18 years old or stuff like that. So don't rule that out, and keep us in mind as resources to you all as you're trying to basically help your students and students for yourselves as you're applying to these different scholarships. If you ever need us to kind of verify that you're entering college, that's something that we're very used to doing and that we can definitely help out. So, all right.
All right, moving on. Next question, what's the difference between the FAFSA and WASSA, and do we need to apply for both?
So no, so the FAFSA is for US citizens or permanent residents. The WASSA is the Washington Application for Student Financial Aid, which is for DACA students, and HB 1079 or undocumented students. So if you're a US citizen or a permanent resident, you fill out the FAFSA. If you're not, if you're one of the DACA or the HB 1079, that's the form you fill out. And you can find that on Get Set Ready Go or something. I think there's a link on our website. I can't remember, but it's, if you type in WASSA, you'll find it in online in the search engine. It has the same deadline as the FAFSA.
Okay, great. So very big distinction there.
Yes.
Yeah. So you should never have to fill out.
It does. if you fill out a FAFSA and end up being a WASSA, you know, that you qualify for WASSA, we can use the FAFSA information. It's just you're not eligible for federal aid.
Okay, great, thank you.
Next question, how is GET money factored into the equation, GET?
So GET money is considered an investment. So you would put that on your assets when you're filling out your FAFSA. So if the parent owns it, it's in the parent's name, in the student, but the parent is the one that started the GET program. They're going to put it under their assets. If it's a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle that signed the student up and it's in their name, then it would be it wouldn't be considered an asset, but the next year you would consider it saying it's untaxed income. So it's funds that you had available to you that did not come from the household. But if it's usually 90% of the time, it's the parents that own it. So it would go in as an asset.
All right, thank you.
Great, thanks. For the next question, for the assets, how to calculate the value if you own a rental property, the value, substrate, the loan for the rental and the resident home.
Complicated question.
Okay, so if you have a rental property and say the rental property was valued at $300,000, but you owed $150,000, then you would put $150. It's just the equity that you have in the rental property. The value of the residence home does not go on the FAFSA.
Next question, and I'm assuming this is related to applying for FAFSA or for a scholarship. Do we register as student or parent?
It's the student that fills it out. So the student logs in. The student has to create an FSA ID. The parent does also, but it's under the student's name. Both the student and the parent have to sign it with their FSA ID. So when you go out there, that's one of the first things you're going to do is register for an FSA ID. Anytime you make an update to the FAFSA, both the student and the parent have to log in and put their FSA ID so that it's basically their electronic signature.
All right.
Curtis, this might be more a question for you. I assume TS will provide grade and transcripts as necessary for scholarship application purposes.
That is absolutely correct. And it's something that, because our grading system is a little bit different in the transition school program than you see kind of nationwide, we have ways of adapting those transcripts as necessary for both transfer to other schools as well as to the UW itself in order to get students credit for these classes towards their caters. But in addition, for any kind of scholarships that you would need. So for that, you would contact the principal of the transition school, which our interim principal right now is Michael Reagan, and he would be happy to kind of help you with that process in whatever way. Okay.
Thanks. Next, do life insurance policies factor into any asset or equities?
No, the only time a life insurance policy would factor in is say one of the parents passes away and you get life insurance from that, and it goes into your bank account of some sort, then you would include that. But if you have a life insurance policy that you have and that if something were to happen, it would be worth this amount, no, you did not put that on the FAFSA.
Another one, a little bit more specific. My employer owns GET credits for my children as an employment benefit. How does that work?
Wow, I never heard that one. Nice employer.
Yeah.
So I would think it would be the same way as if it were a grandparent or an aunt. So you wouldn't put it on the FAFSA. You would, so say for 1920, you use those funds. In 2021, one of the questions on the FAFSA is, did you have any untaxed income given to you to go towards your cost of attendance? You would report it then.
So basically it works almost as a kind of gift.
A gift, yeah. Right. So, but it is a question that they'll ask you on any untaxed, any income from others to help support.
Fantastic. All right. Learning a lot here myself.
Next question. This person is thanking you all for the clarifications on applying for outside scholarships, but the question is, many of the scholarships for students entering college this fall have application deadlines that occur before the UW Academy admissions decision date. Is it kosher to apply for an outside scholarship even if one hasn't yet been accepted to the UW Academy?
You know, that's a really interesting question, and it's an unfortunate factor of our admissions process being a little bit later that you're encountering that same reason why financial aid is so complicated for our students regardless.
Kind of a hard one because...
A little bit of a hard one, yeah. I
guess it depends.
Yeah.
I mean, you could. A lot of times outside scholarships are not awarded until sometime in May or June.
Right.
So that may be a benefit for,
Yes.
You said April is the...
Yes, April is the end of April is the time that you'll kind of find out about that.
So I would think that you would go ahead and apply for them. A lot of scholarships, just as an FYI, I don't want to deter you from not applying, opened last fall for students that were applying for next fall. But there are some still out there, but keep in mind that, you know, your student's going to be in for 4 years and maybe you're not going to have those scholarships that first year because of the deadlines and the timing, but it's not just freshmen that get scholarships.
Right. Actually, contrary to that, I think our students are actually much more successful finding, especially merit-based scholarships in their last 2 years when they're interested and defined, when they've gone out. And then they often qualify for scholarships offered to UW students specifically that they
through their departments. Yeah. There's also an office on campus called the Merit Fellowship. Scholarships,
merit. Yeah.
There's a scholarship office on campus over at Mary Gates Hall, and that you can go in. They actually have classes that you can take on getting scholarships. Once you're an admitted student, you can log into their system and look at what they have. And a lot of their scholarships are more merit-based than the need-based, right? I believe, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So going back to the question that was asked, though, I think I would encourage in whatever circumstances that you can to I would encourage you to try to direct that question actually to the application or the scholarship that is in question. If there is no way to do that, I think it is perfectly acceptable to apply for the scholarship. Certainly if the student is not accepted to the university, I think it would be an ethical move to kind of alert the scholarship agency to that and let them know that that it didn't end up working in that way. If they don't have their own process for making sure that the money is going to somebody in the correct way. So I don't think that there's anything problematic or unethical about applying in general. Certainly accepting money if you don't get in would be the biggest problem, at which point it would require you to be kind of on top of that. And again, if they have questions or concerns about the way that process works and why it's so late and why students aren't finding out that they're getting in until a much later date, those questions can be directed at us. We're happy to confirm that this is in fact how our program works, et cetera, et cetera.
Great, thanks for that. Next question, what happens if you miss the January 15th deadline? Does that mean the student is not eligible for this year?
Great question.
No, it does not. The deadline is a priority deadline. So that means that to be eligible, if you're qualified for, or if you're eligible based on your EFC for priority aid, grants, scholarships, you need to apply by the 15th. After the 15th, you're still eligible for aid. It's just not as much aid. You'll always be eligible for loans. Yeah. People don't realize that, you know, they hate saying loans and everything in the news and everything about student loans and everything, but sometimes a family, that's all they're eligible for. And if that's going to be, help your student get where they want to be, it is an investment in the student's future. But if you are eligible, say for the Pell Grant for the lower to middle income families, that's something that is not based on the deadline. So no, it's not too late after the 15th. And then there's always, if there's a reason that you filled it out too late, we do have appeals that you can appeal the reason why you filled it out late. So No, don't, if you don't get it done by the 15th. And you're going to be using 2017's tax information when you fill this out. So there's no reason that you shouldn't have your tax information available, because most people have filled out their taxes for 2017 already.
Right.
Hopefully.
So just to recap and make sure that everybody heard that, January 15th is a priority deadline. You are still eligible for aid beyond that. You can apply after that deadline, but you're applying for a slightly different and slightly less expansive pool of money that's available to you. As far as, you know, what's available is a little bit different if you apply later.
Great. This is a question asking just how in general you apply for loans. So I don't know if you mentioned or could reiterate sort of how you apply through the FAFSA.
You don't apply separately for the loan. It's all based on just filling out the FAFSA. When we get that FAFSA information, that EFC I was talking about, the expected family contribution, tells us where you qualify on, I don't know how you would say it, on the grid or whatever. So depending on what your need is, so you have an EFC, like I said, you have a cost of attendance. What the difference between your cost of attendance and your EFC is usually how we award students. But you can always ask for more. There's student loans, there's parent loans. You just have to ask the office if you have more questions about it. But loans are going to be part of the what make up your financial aid award that we give you.
So what will happen, just again to clarify what this looks like, right, on the student side, is that after you've been accepted to either of our two programs and you're on your way to being a UW freshman, you will get a notification. I think it comes in the form of an email. It's something that you can access online from the financial aid office. And based on your FAFSA and the EFC that Lisa was just talking about, they will have a whole slew of things, basically, usually, that they're offering you. Some of it may be in the form of grants sometimes. Some of it may be in the form of awards. Some of it may be in the form of loans and different types of loans. And you'll be able to, at that point, and again, for Academy students, this is sometime in like April, May. For EAP students, it's going to be sometime after the transition school year. You'll have a chance to look at all of that. You'll be able to have a chance to look at the interest rates, you know, what those things actually are. And at that point, you're going to get the opportunity to accept or decline all, none, or some parts of all of that. So I know this from having been on the other side, kind of receiving these offers and things like that. So you don't have to worry that by applying for something on January 15th, you're going to be automatically signed up for some kind of a loan that you don't have any information about, or that you're going to be committed to something. Really what the FAFSA does is it allows the financial aid office to put together a best case scenario package for you. All of the things that they can offer you. And if you, at the end of the day, look at those offers and maybe it's nothing but loans that you're not interested in, you just say, no, thank you. And you move on into the university, you know, funding it in whichever way that you would like. So keep that in mind, right? That the financial aid office is going to do all this work to assemble all of the possible things that you could be using to fund your students' education and presenting it to you, at which point you'll have choice about everything.
You can actually go on to our website and look under loans, and there's a chart that will tell you the current interest rates and the different loan limits and all of that, if you're wondering how the loans work and what loans are available.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Next question. I know some UW schools offer scholarships, for example, music. Is that separate than this application?
Yes, that's based off of your application to the university or to that department. To that department,
yes. So that's most of those schools, you're not going to be eligible for those things until you actually enter into the major. You know, the music school isn't going to give you a scholarship if you're not actually going to come and be a music student. And for most schools, you know, although this is changing a little bit, for most schools, that's something that you would do after you've already spent a year or two here. There are a couple of schools that are moving more towards kind of direct admit, and then I'm assuming they're kind of doing their scholarship assessments through that process. But again, that's not something that we're going to do or the financial aid office is going to handle. That's something that's handed out from those individual departments when students apply to their majors.
Great, thank you. If 529 money is not available until 2021, does that impact the package for the UW Academy students?
So they're not able to cash it out until, or start using it till 2021. The only thing it would be is you'd have to consider it an asset when you're filling out your FAFSA. That's,
Yeah, I'm not familiar with 529.
529 is like get.
Okay.
It's just a different method going through. A lot of times it will be going through some kind of financial, like Schwab or something like that.
Some kind of penalty for withdrawing that money earlier.
Right, but you do need to count it as a an asset. Hope that answers it. If not, maybe be a little more clear.
Okay, I'll follow up and see. I'll send a shout out again if folks have questions who are joining us and have not submitted them through the chat function. Please go ahead and do that. At this point, unless I missed anybody, I think we've covered everything that's been submitted. But also, as Lisa just mentioned, if you need clarity on anything we've talked about, I've tried to type in some of the websites and other terminology that's been used, but please feel free to use that chat function if there's any more. But Curtis and Lisa, I don't know if you have any other tips or tricks or anything you want to share with the group while we're all together.
I would say that if you do have questions, you feel free to call our office. You don't have to be a student to talk to a counselor in our office. You could come in and talk to someone, you could call. We'd be more than willing to answer your questions or anything. You don't have to be an admitted student to find out financial aid questions.
And that's also what we would recommend, partially because we here at the Robinson Center, as I said before, are not necessarily financial aid experts. It's one of the reasons why we rely on our partners like Lisa here to help us out in serving all of you. So follow-up questions beyond this particular question and answer session should definitely be directed at financial aid. And of course, we're here to help you if you have trouble making that connection. But oftentimes we would direct any questions that you would send to us over to financial aid anyway. So you're better off kind of contacting them directly. So.
We did have another question pop up. Is WorkStudy available or recommended for EAPers?
So let's start off with the general question. How does WorkStudy factor in the way that?
Okay, so WorkStudy is based off of your FAFSA again. It's for the lower EFC groups on WorkStudy. So if on your FAFSA, one of the questions is, are you interested in WorkStudy? So if you say yes, and you are eligible based off of your EFC, then it will be part of your award package when we offer you the aid.
As far as whether or not we recommend WorkStudy for EAPers, I don't know that we've ever actually been asked that question, so I can't say whether or not we recommend it or not. I do know that some of our students, and maybe Catherine can speak to this too if she has any specific examples in mind. I know that some of our students have done WorkStudy in the past. My understanding is some of them have done it a little further along in their studies, which brings me to the question of whether or not age restrictions might be an issue there a little bit. I would bet, although maybe don't quote me on this, or maybe this is something that I would investigate further, that that students are probably eligible to do some WorkStudy at least by the time that they're 16. Although like some of our younger EAP students, 14, 15, may have a little bit of an issue with that. Other than that, I think the students that I've seen that have done WorkStudy have had a positive experience. One of the advantages, of course, of WorkStudy and if for students that are looking to supplement their income with employment is, of course, that any WorkStudy program, any employment here on campus is going to be very sensitive to the student, to the fact that their employees are students. So altered schedules during finals week and allowances for particular assignments and things like that is going to be basically built into the system. Whereas if you're working down the street at McDonald's or, you know, for some kind of random retailer, they don't necessarily care about accommodating students' kind of schoolwork lives. So that's one advantage of WorkStudy if that's something, if students are interested in getting jobs anyway. That's really all I can say about that. I wish I knew a little bit more. I would say it's not a popular option for either our EAP or Academy students, but I do know a few that have kind of engaged in it, and none of them have reported anything negative to me, certainly. So.
Great. Not seeing a whole much more. I'm corresponding with somebody just about the expected family contribution. One thing I was going to just add to your point, Curtis, is I think that we do have a lot of students who do work, like you mentioned, while they're enrolled. And I think that students in general do find sort of what you mentioned, that working on campus, employers tend to be more flexible and more understanding with student schedules than if you're just working for a retailer off campus. And there are on-campus jobs that are not solely for work-study students. So I think there are a variety of different options there.
Right, some of them are like at the library and things like that.
And a lot of the food service on campus is not work study.
Right, Starbucks, all the other good stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Here's another question coming in. Can you talk a little bit more about TA and RA opportunities?
Very few undergraduates do TA or RA shifts. We see, I see a handful of them a year. So you're looking at, that's more for the graduate student.
Right. I will actually say that that's true in the general kind of UW. Now, one of the things that the Robinson Center loves to do is to hire our students, both EP and CAD students, as TAs in our summer and Saturday program. So those are some of the biggest options that are available. And those come around quarterly for the Saturday program and yearly for the summer program if students are looking for summer employment. Oftentimes, it's another opportunity, too, for students to get engaged in things that they might already be passionate about. If you have a student that's really engaged and enthusiastic about writing, they can TA the writing courses and actually get to know maybe graduate students or other instructors around campus who are going to be teaching those classes and working with them. Similarly, if you're interested in natural sciences work, we're often hiring both advanced graduate students and local area teachers and things like that to teach those classes, so it's another way for students to make contact with mentors and things. RA ships, I guess the one thing that I would say is that our students really routinely get involved in research here at the university. That work is largely unpaid. So it's a, you've probably heard me speak about this if you've been to any info sessions or seen any information about the UW itself, but the UW is actually one of the best schools in the country for affording our university students the opportunity to be engaged in full-blown professional level research opportunities. And that even starts with freshman students. Actually, these labs, like labs that are doing biomedical research and also, all sorts of, and computer science research, and all these different kinds of research on campus, and also in the humanities and the social sciences, they actually reported that they really like bringing in younger students like freshmen, sophomore students, because those students will often be in their labs for several years, and it won't just be 1 year of like having to train a young student just to be safe with the beakers and then like have them go off to somewhere else and have to bring in somebody new. So a lot of our students get involved in research during their time at the university. It's one of the things that they most look forward to. It's one of the things that really enriches their experience. And almost none of them get paid for that work. It's kind of like internships and things like that that are kind of geared to help students get some experience that's going to be useful to them down the road, but these are not typically paid positions.
Curtis, I just wanted to jump in. I know we've had students apply to be RAs in the past, and what they find is that is one of the places where age restriction comes in. So our students who've applied to that in the past were told that they needed to be 18. I think it was before they would actually start that process. So many of our students, especially some of our CAD students, will definitely turn 18 and be older than that during their time here, but that would be one consideration for being able to be an RA in a dorm.
I think another circumstance that I've heard of is that some undergraduate programs, some of the especially some of the ones that have some of the really big intro classes, will sometimes bring on undergraduate TAs, but that's something that you would only find out about and apply to once you've already been really involved in those departments. So again, not for freshman students, usually mostly for relatively advanced undergrads, but I have heard of undergraduate students working as TAs. I'm assuming there's some pay attached to this, although I am not really sure.
There is pay, sometimes a waiver of their portion of their tuition waivers, but like you said, those come through the departments. The only thing our office does anything with those is the reporting them as a resource. So if they get any kind of waiver or not the pay isn't counted against them, but the the waiver of tuition would be they need to report it to our office. But other than that, it all comes through the department.
Thank you. A couple final things here. Is there any place to put dependents who are not reported on a tax return? Example, older parents and in-laws in another country who are financially dependent on us.
So you have to be supporting the people more than 50% of their support to include them. If they're in another country, you cannot include them because they do not live in your household. So they have to live in your household. It doesn't matter if they're over the age of 24 and living, as long as you are supporting them more than 50% of their support.
Okay.
Thanks for that. So referencing the TA opportunities you just mentioned, someone wanting to know how to find out about those and do they directly contact the department?
So for so going back to the question, answer the question, as I said, some of probably the most accessible TA opportunities that are available are actually available through the Robinson Center, where our undergraduate students in both EAP and ACAD are working with younger students in our Saturday and summer programs. We send out the job calls for those routinely over the course of the year when they come up. I think, again, it's quarterly for the Saturday program, so those will get sent out, probably middle of the quarter for the quarter that's coming next. And then in summer, I think we're starting to hire TAs probably around late winter, early spring. We'll send those out. Once your student is accepted to become a Robinson Center student, they get added to a listserv for our students that we use to communicate opportunities like that with them. And that's one of the ways they'll be able to hear about that. As far as the TA opportunities that we talked about in the department, so again, we know of some undergraduate students that have had the opportunity to be TAs for, say, computer science or for math or for some bio classes, I believe, in some cases. That's something that, yeah, you're going to hear about through the actual departments. I think that usually the departments themselves do their hiring internally, so that the departments themselves will send out those job calls when they come out to their students, the students that are already enrolled in those programs. I don't know this as a fact, but my anticipation would be that simply like a freshman student reaching out to the math program, hoping to be a TA is not really going to be a thing that works for them. That department wants to see that student first and foremost actually take the classes that they would be TAing. And then once they become a more advanced math student, they might be contacted for more opportunities within that department. But I want to again repeat that those TA opportunities for undergraduates at the college level are relatively rare. It's not like a huge job opportunity for a lot of different people. We've seen a number of our students get those opportunities largely, again, because our students tend to be relatively advanced within their programs, often high performing within their programs. But in every single one of the cases that I've seen a student be a TA for an actual college class, it's been in their third or fourth year.
Thank you for that. I'm not seeing any additional questions. Lisa, to your point, I put the email and phone number for the financial aid office so folks can follow up with you directly. People are saying thanks, that you've done a great job of answering questions. So I don't know if you want to maybe take a few minutes and just, throw any final thoughts out, but I'm not seeing anything pop up in our chat.
Well, that's great. I hope that people have felt supported and that they've had their question answered. I guess I would just throw it over to you, Lisa, just for if there's any final advice that you would offer to prospective families as they're applying for financial aid for the first time or thinking about funding college.
Again, like I said, that priority deadline is really important. Remember that once your student is in school, you need to fill out that application every year. We do send out reminders to students that have FAFSA applications that are UW students. We actually just sent one out a couple days ago to about 25,000 students to remind them to do their FAFSA. Those are everyone that we didn't have one yet for that is current student. So it's just being on time. If you have questions, just call our office, check out our website. There's a lot of information out there. I don't know what else to say, but ask questions. They're trying to simplify the FAFSA to make it easier for people to do. It's really not that hard. It uses a lot of skip logic. So, you know, it's going to follow your answers to what the next question will be for you. But again, as we always say, the main thing is make sure you do it by that priority deadline to assure that you may be eligible for any grants that you wouldn't get if you weren't by the January 15th deadline.
Okay. So try to keep that deadline in mind, everyone. I see one last question here that is about just simply the years. And Mara, you are correct. If you qualify for the UW Academy, you will start your bachelor's degree the 2019-2020 school year. That goes the same for current transition school parents and students who are applying this year. Apply to start your bachelor's degree the 2019-2020 school year. And good luck, everybody, with those applications. I think we'll go ahead and finish up this session now. So again, encourage you to make use of us, make use of the financial aid office for any more questions that you have. Yes, good luck with that part of the application. Also, let us know if you have any questions about non-financial aid related questions about the application process. We're here to help you as our students make their way towards these opportunities. So it was good seeing everybody tonight, and hopefully this has been helpful.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Curtis. And thanks to everybody who tuned in. Again, if you are looking at the chat, you've got the email and phone number for the financial aid office, and please do follow up with them or contact us here at the Robinson Center if you have general program questions. But thanks again for participating. We'll go ahead and log off for the night.
Thank you.
Thank you.